Welcome back to The Rancher's Voice, the podcast where the heart of agriculture meets the pulse of today's industry. From policy changes to pressing issues, The Rancher's Voice dives into the stories that matter most to ag producers.
In each episode, we will cover topics including legislation, leadership, and the agricultural lifestyle. So be sure to subscribe to The Rancher's Voice everywhere podcasts are featured. If podcasts aren't your thing, watch us on the Montana Stockgrowers YouTube channel. Hey guys, welcome back to the Montana Stockgrowers Ranchers Voice podcast. This is the Capital Edition, which is our legislative updates that we will be doing every week. So we're kicking off season 2 of the Ranchers Voice with our first Capital Update. I'm Ellie Brighton, the Government Affairs Specialist for the Montana Stockgrowers Association.
And I'm Rayleigh Honeycutt, the Executive Vice President. And we want to welcome all of our listeners to the podcast and thank you for joining us. I know we have a few listeners out there that have made comments about our promos and that are very excited to listen to the podcast.
Shout out to our fans.
Yes, and a shout out to Representative Brandon Gregg, who has been asking us when this first episode will drop. So here you go, Representative. What we thought we would do to kind of kick off the podcast is to kind of give you a little introduction to each of us. For those of you who heard season 1, I was on it with our former Executive Vice President. We've had some staffing changes, and so this year it's myself as well as Ellie, and Ellie's new to the Montana Stockgrowers team. Ellie, do you want to share a little bit about yourself and where you came from and how long you've been at MSGA?
Yeah. So I have been at MSGA since August of last year. So I believe February is a year and a half here. I am originally from Central Oregon and I studied ag economics in college, but I was always interested in policy. And so this job came up and I took it and here I am. So
we're super happy to have you. So
well, good. I like being here.
We'll see what our listeners say. Put like or put comments and let us know what you think about Ellie.
Maybe don't. I can't handle it.
As we kind of kick off this first podcast, it's kind of a unique week for us because, well, future episodes will be kind of more the down and dirty of what's happening with specific bills or specific issues. This one is kind of more of the pomp and circumstance of the legislative session and what happens as we kind of ramp up to the beginning of a legislative session. One of the things that we were able to participate in this week as we kicked off the legislative session was the inauguration of our state elected officers as well as the governor, which was really exciting. So back in 2020 when Governor Gianforte was elected to his first term, that was during the COVID pandemic, and so inaugurations weren't really happening. Governor Gianforte as well as Lieutenant Governor Juris kind of held their swearing-in ceremonies in small rooms with immediate family and didn't get to have large-scale events. When I say large-scale event, this event was awesome that we experienced this week.
It was so cool. They decorated it really well. There were tons of American flags, big banners with the seal of Montana. It was very dramatic, I guess you would say. So it was cool.
In a good way.
Yeah, in a good dramatic. Yeah.
One thing that they did do this year that was a little different compared to other governors' inaugurations was that they did it outside the Capitol, which is a brave decision to make when it's January in Montana. And so kudos and shout out to the governor's staff and the Capitol's facility services folks for shoveling snow all night and getting the facility ready for a large crowd to come in that inauguration. In addition to the governor and Lieutenant Governor, all of the state offices were sworn in by Chief Justice Corey Swanson, which is exciting because he was new to his post as well. But we saw in the first swearing-in ceremony, a friend and a familiar face to many of us in agriculture, with Jim Brown being sworn in as the new state auditor. For those of you who are from Montana and listening, Jim previously worked for the Montana wool growers in a lobbying capacity and has served in a variety of different elected official roles as well. And so we're really excited to have him in the auditor's seat and kind of overseeing the securities and insurance industry for the state of Montana.
Another new face that was sworn in was Susie Hedelin. She assumed the office as the new superintendent of public instruction for K-12 education. She's from Townsend and the superintendent there, but we're excited to have her. I think she will be great to work with and looking forward to it.
And then both being sworn in for their second terms, we saw Attorney General Austin Knudsen as well as Secretary of State Chrissy Jacobson get sworn in. Obviously, these 4 key positions, as well as the governor, all serve on the land board for the state of Montana. And so we interface with them quite a bit when it comes to land issues and the decisions that are made within the land board. And so excited to see all of these individuals get sworn in and at a really great event. And we really look forward to working with them as we move into this 2025 year.
And then, of course, the icing on the cake was the swearing in of the Lieutenant Governor Christian Juris and Governor Greg Gianforte. Both of them had their families with them. And as many of you guys know, it's their second term, but it was cool. Like Rayleigh said, there was no ceremony in 2020, so it was good to have one. And then Governor Gianforte gave a speech. It was great. It was kind of a hype speech, which was fun to kick off the legislative session and made you feel proud to be a Montanan, I guess. I don't know. I think that was the purpose, but he did a good job of that. So
and definitely put some fun energy in the air as we kind of kicked off the morning and before all the legislators were sworn in. So it was a really great event. One of the things that I really liked when the governor made his comments that he highlighted was the fun fact that it has been 130 years since the governor's office, all state offices, statewide offices, as well as both chambers of legislature, as well as our federal offices have all been held by Republicans. So that was kind of crazy to kind of think about that it's really been 130 years since that has happened, and looking forward to seeing the work that will be done and all of the things that all of these elected officials will be doing in their new offices and capacities. We kind of then headed into the Capitol for the kickoff of the legislature, the first day of legislatures when all of the representatives and senators get sworn in. So a lot of family members were there and lots of just excitement around that and proud moments for many individuals as they kind of were sworn into their stations. But then it was time to get to work, and the House and Senate hit the floor, and we saw some unprecedented and maybe unexpected things happen on the Senate floor. So one of those things is that usually on the first day you get sworn in, you confirm your leadership, you adopt rules, and then you kind of move forward with committee assignments and then get to work for the people. And what we saw on the Senate side was that when a motion was made for the rules, Minority Leader Flowers stood up and made a motion to adopt temporary rules for the Senate. And when that motion went to vote, 9 Republicans sided with the minority party, and those rules were passed. And so the Senate is currently operating under temporary rules and rules that were not brought forward by the majority party, which is interesting and really hasn't happened for quite a few years. And so that kind of put some things into place that people weren't expecting. One of those is that because rules by the majority have not been voted on and agreed upon, the leadership did cancel Senate committee meetings all week, and so we actually haven't been in a Senate committee yet to participate or have any bill hearings, but they went back to the floor a couple times. They've done a couple different votes, and still those 9 Republicans are voting with the Democrats and keeping those temporary rules in place. And so it's kind of a fluid situation.
Yeah, very.
We're still watching what's happening. We are hearing in the second week that Senate committees will at least have committee hearings, but still to be determined on what's going to be happening with the rules and committee assignments. And so looking forward to kind of getting that resolved and getting to work on the Senate side.
So week 2 will be interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing how it turns out.
Yeah, and I think it's important to mention that the House is meeting. Yes. They are having committees. This is really just an issue related to the Senate chambers, and the House has hit the ground running, and they are working hard and having committee hearings.
Yeah, keeping us busy. We attended a few committee hearings this week, all on committees that Stockgrowers engages in pretty frequently. So a few of those were the Fish and Game Committee.
They actually had a joint meeting together. It's very common at the start of legislative session for committees to have kind of organizational meetings is what it's called. They get educated on how committees work, but then they also invite agencies into those meetings to do introductions as well as lobbyists that they see on a frequent basis.
Yeah. So it was really great for me with this being my first session to kind of get an idea of how it all works. But yeah, so the Fish and Game Committee met, and the chair for the Senate side was Denley Logie, and the vice chairs are Shelley Vance and Pat Flowers. And then for the House, the chair is Jedediah Hinkle, and the vice chairs are Caleb Hinkle and Jill Konauer. Like Rayleigh said, the Senate and the House committees met together, and so that was just a big joint meeting. And then the House Natural Resource Committee met. Chairs Steve Gist, vice chairs Greg Oblender and Marilyn Marler. Senate Agriculture, Livestock, and Irrigation Committee did meet yesterday. I think they were one of the only Senate committees to meet this week, but the chair is Butch Gillespie and the vice chairs are Josh Kastmeyer and Ellie Boldman. And then we did attend the House Agriculture Committee meeting twice this week. The first time was kind of that organizational meeting, and the second time was for a bill hearing. So the chair of the House Ag Committee is Braxton Mitchell, and the vice chairs are Russ Miner and Bob Carter.
So it was really great. One of the first bills that was heard in front of the House Ag Committee was a bill that MSGA had a position on, as well as many of our members came into town to testify on this bill, and that was House Bill 119, which is a bill that proposes the formation of the Montana Cattle Committee. So Ellie, do you want to just give us a little bit of a background on what that bill proposes?
Yeah, so that bill essentially allows for a referendum to take place in the state. So if the bill passes and moves forward through the legislature, then the committee will kind of come together and create a referendum where they will have cattle producers vote whether or not they would like a statewide assessment. Similar kind of to the beef checkoff, but that dollar would stay in the state of Montana and it would be administered by a committee within the state. At this point, the bill says that the committee would be appointed by the governor, and there would be representatives from different groups there, and then the dollar would be used for different things: education, research, promotion of Montana seed stock specifically. So yeah, it's something that our members have been working on, and so have members from other organizations as well.
Yeah, so this is kind of like a third-party group that's been working on this. One thing that you didn't mention that I would add is that this would be somewhat similar to or crafted around like the Wheat and Barley Committee that many people are familiar with. But instead of being under the Department of Agriculture, it would be under the Department of Livestock. But one thing that this working group has done over the past couple months is that they have hit the ground. As if you are listening and you're a member of the Montana Stockgrowers Association, then you've probably seen presentations at your local affiliates or at Montana Stockgrowers Convention. But definitely there have been many opportunities to kind of hear what this committee is up to around the state. So we did testify. Montana Stockgrowers is supportive of the concept of creating this Montana Cattle Committee, and like you said in our testimony, we really hit on the high points of, one, that this is producer-driven and producer-led. Also, that there is a referendum tied to it. So while this bill really sets up the structure of what the Montana Cattle Committee would do and all of the government nuances, right, like procurement and hiring and things like that, it also does allow for us to kind of have a referendum vote to really decide on if that assessment goes into place. And then the other thing that we really have been tracking and highlighted in our testimony was that there is a provision within the bill that allows for producers to request a refund for their assessment if they so feel. So that was great. I thought that the committee was really interested in the topic. There were a lot of great questions from the committee. We saw great testimony from people on both sides of their positions. And so we'll see. The committee didn't take any executive action on the first committee hearing day, but we anticipate them taking executive action in week 2. And so we'll be tracking that and keeping you up to date. So with that, that's kind of a recap of our first week, and really want to thank you and our listeners for joining us, and really want to encourage you that if you have questions or thoughts or want to learn more about a certain bill, we encourage you to reach out to the Montana Stockgrowers office. We're always here. As we mentioned, we want to be a resource to legislators, but we also want to be a resource to our listeners and our members, and so always feel free to reach out to us. If you want to learn more about some of the bills that Montana Stockgrowers is tracking, you can visit our website at mtbeef.org and go to our legislative page. We have new software that we're excited to kind of implement, and so that new software allows us to kind of put in real time bill updates on our website. And so if you're interested in that type and want to geek out on some policy, would encourage you to check that out on our website. So for now, that's a week recap of week 1. Thanks for joining us for Capital Edition, and we look forward to talking with you more as we go through the 69th legislative session of the Montana Legislature. Thanks.